There was a time when you'd apologize to a lamppost if you walked into it, and no one thought that was strange. You'd hold a door open for a stranger, linger a moment too long just to make sure they had time to pass through. You'd mutter a quiet sorry if someone brushed past you on the pavement, even when it wasn't your fault. These small acts were woven into everyday life, unnoticed yet felt by everyone around you. Picture a quiet street in a small town, somewhere in Britain during the 1960s. The morning air carries the faint scent of baked bread from the corner shop. Children's shoes scuff gently on the pavement, and distant voices greet each other as neighbors cross the road. Manners weren't printed in books or memorized at school. They were absorbed, learned by watching, by repeating, by sharing the rhythm of everyday life. They shaped how people moved, spoke, and even felt about one another. Back then, life had a slower pulse, a softer texture. These small courtesies weren't performative, they were practical, and they made Britain feel quieter, kinder, more connected. Most people don't remember when these habits began to fade, only when they noticed they were gone. Here on Past Britannia, we try to hold on to these little moments, capturing the manners, the memories, and the quiet ways people once looked out for one another. If you want to keep these memories alive, hit subscribe, and if a memory of your own just flickered in your mind, give this video a like. Up next, we'll explore the first vanished manner that shaped every street, every shop, and every polite encounter you'd ever forgotten. In the decades following the Second World War, Britain was a nation quietly rebuilding itself. The streets once scarred by bomb sites slowly filled with new houses, shops reopened with cheerful window displays, and the rhythm of daily life settled into something steady and familiar. People didn't rush as they do today. There were fewer choices and fewer distractions. Life moved at a gentler pace, and in that calm, there was a shared understanding about how to behave, how to treat each other, how to move through the day without friction. Neighbors knew each other's names, and if you didn't know them, you were politely introduced by someone else. The corner shopkeeper remembered your preferences. The bus conductor nodded with a quiet familiarity, and in queues there was an unspoken agreement that everyone would wait their turn, with patience rather than complaint. Pavements were small stages for everyday courtesies, stepping aside for a passerby, acknowledging a slight bump with a whispered sorry, letting someone join you at the post office counter without question. These weren't rules enforced by authority. They were social glue, small habits that made the world run smoothly and pleasantly. Politeness wasn't a performance, it was practical, almost instinctive. Contrast this with today, where so much is hurried, where words are fewer and gestures smaller, replaced by screens and silent impatience. Back then, patience was built into the day. A slow bus journey or a crowded shop wasn't a frustration but a space for quiet interaction, for shared experience. There was a rhythm to life that has largely vanished, a texture of connection that many of us only remember when we stumble across an old photograph or a fleeting memory. And within all of this, there was a single, almost invisible habit that everyone practiced without thinking, so ordinary that no one ever thanked you for doing it. Yet it shaped the flow of every street, every shop, every polite encounter you experienced. Up next, we'll uncover that first vanished manner, and why it mattered more than anyone realized. There was a time when the queue was sacred. Step into a shop, a bus stop, or the post office, and you joined a silent agreement that everyone understood. Eyes met briefly, a subtle nod acknowledged your place, and that was enough. No signs were needed, no instructions posted, people simply knew. There was a rhythm to waiting, a patience that made the world feel smaller and safer. A whispered apology if you jostled someone, a quiet thank you when your turn arrived, and the soft shuffle of shoes on worn linoleum floors all formed the soundtrack of everyday life. Polite greetings were another small ritual that shaped a day. Good morning wasn't reserved for friends or family. It was offered to neighbors, postmen, and even strangers on the street. A nod to someone passing by, a smile to a child on their way to school. These gestures required no conversation, only acknowledgement. It was a way of saying silently, I see you. We share this space together. These greetings were brief, but they carried a warmth that made public life feel connected. And then there was the quiet respect that filled public spaces. Voices were softer in shops, libraries, and buses, not because of rules, but because people understood when not to speak, when to let the world continue without intrusion. It was a shared courtesy, subtle yet deeply felt. The sound of footsteps, the rustle of newspapers, the gentle murmur of conversation, all of it wove together into a tapestry of everyday respect. Compare that to today, where waiting often feels like a race, greetings are hurried or skipped entirely, and public spaces can feel louder and more impatient. The unspoken cooperation that once defined the day has largely been replaced by individual urgency. But back then, these small manners made strangers feel less like strangers, and every encounter carried a quiet sense of connection. And yet, these were only the first hints of a lost world. Beyond cues, greetings, and silence, there was a more personal, almost invisible habit that shaped childhood and adulthood alike. One so ordinary we barely noticed it at the time. It quietly framed how we treated others, and it left a mark on the way we remembered our own youth. Up next, we'll uncover that habit, and see how it taught a kind of empathy that words could never capture. The small manners we've been talking about did more than keep the day running smoothly. They made people feel seen. A nod in the street, a whispered thank you, a quiet apology when you bumped into someone. All of it reminded us that we mattered, even in the smallest ways. On hard days, these tiny gestures softened the edges, offering reassurance without fanfare. You didn't have to ask for attention or kindness. It simply arrived, folded into the rhythm of everyday life. Think of the times you were walking home alone, perhaps feeling a little overlooked, and a neighbor tipped their hat or called a cheerful good morning. That moment, brief as it was, could lift a weight you hadn't even realized you were carrying. Or the simple courtesy of someone letting you pass first in a queue, or holding a door open when your arms were full. It was acknowledgement without effort, a reminder that you were part of something larger. These weren't grand traditions or elaborate ceremonies, just small kindnesses, repeated daily. And yet, in their repetition, they quietly shaped British life forever. They taught patience, consideration, and empathy without ever needing a lesson plan. People missed them not because the rules mattered, but because the feeling behind them mattered. A shared decency, an unspoken contract that said, we look out for each other here today. We may still remember these gestures with a wistful smile, but their absence leaves a subtle emptiness. The routines, the shared understanding, the tiny acts of care, they slipped away almost unnoticed, replaced by speed, screens, and convenience. And as we prepare to look at Britain now, it's worth asking, what did we gain in the meantime, and what quietly disappeared in the process? The answer reveals more than just manners. It tells a story about who we were and what we lost along the way. Looking back, it's easy to see the contrast between then and now. Today, convenience rules our lives. Instant messages, online shopping, and fast-paced commutes. Communication is quicker, but somehow thinner, and interactions that once carried warmth can feel fleeting. Back then, connection was built into the small acts of daily life: a nod, a smile, a whispered thank you. These gestures created a sense of belonging that no technology can replicate. That isn't to say progress hasn't brought countless benefits. Life is easier, travel faster, and opportunities greater than ever before. But alongside the gains, something quietly slipped away. The unspoken courtesies that made strangers feel like neighbors, that made the everyday a little gentler, a little more human. There's no bitterness in remembering them, only a gentle longing for a Britain where the pace of life allowed room for care. Do you remember any of these small manners from your own childhood? Perhaps a gesture that made a lonely day feel lighter, or a habit you only now realize was part of life. Share this with someone who lived through it with you, and together, you can bring those memories back to life. These moments still matter. They remind us that even the smallest acts of consideration can shape how we experience the world, and how we remember it.